murder mystery. An Instagram influencer found dead in her Richmond apartment. The body of the man accused of killing her also inside. ABC 13's Shelley Childers is live with what we know tonight. Shelley.
Eric, she was known as Mercedes Moore on Instagram. Millions of people followed her, but police tell us it was inside her Richmond apartment behind me where she was found dead inside. On Instagram, she was known as Miss Mercedes Moore. Her adult content followed by 2.6 million people, including superstar Snoop Dogg and Megan Thee Stallion. Her real name was Janae Gagnier. The 33-year-old was found dead inside her upscale apartment in Richmond, Texas. Police say they were called to this quiet complex for a welfare check Sunday. Inside the apartment, they found Mercedes Moore and another man believed to be the suspect who killed her, Kevin Alexander Accordo. He was also dead, police calling it a murder-suicide. Investigators say there is no relationship between Mercedes and the suspect, telling us his last known address was in Florida. Neighbors we spoke with called the complex quiet and secure.
It'd be kind of surprising to know that this was an intruder, someone that broke into the house, because I wouldn't think that that would happen here.
Police have not said how the two died, telling us the cause of death will come from the medical examiner. In Richmond, Shelley Childers, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
We begin with a Grammy Award-winning artist waved to honor a Houston Instagram model who was killed Sunday. Drake dedicated his album, Certified Lover Boy, to Miss Mercedes Moore. The 33-year-old, whose real name is Janae Gagnier, was strangled in
Instagram model with more than 2 million followers is found murdered in Richmond.
Tonight, police say they don't know, or don't rather have a motive, but the suspect is dead too. Our Grace White is following the case.
Her name was Miss Mercedes Moore. At least that's what she goes by on Instagram, where she has more than 2 million followers. Her real name, Janae Gagnier, now dead at 33.
We pulled in while everybody was still here, and the police were here, and the people were grieving.
Neighbors at the apartment complex in Richmond on West Point Circle shocked Sunday evening to see a crime scene.
This lady did pass away, that she was killed, and really that's all that we know.
And much about the case is still a mystery. Richmond police are the lead. All they've said so far, they believe it was a murder-suicide. The medical examiner says she was strangled to death. Found with her was 34-year-old Kevin Accordo. The ME says he died by suicide from multiple sharp force trauma.
Certainly we're going to be praying for her family. We know that it's a tragedy for the whole community.
A tragedy where there's still no known motive. Police say her family told detectives there was no relationship between the two, but there was no forced entry. Investigators confirmed his address in Florida, leaving family and friends to wonder if she was stalked on social media. But when we asked, Richmond police told us it's all still under investigation. Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
Welcome to Sinister Tales, where every whisper hides a secret and every story leaves a shadow. If you're drawn to the darkest corners of true crime and mystery, you're in the right place. Subscribe now, because some tales were never meant to be forgotten. In the vast, glittering world of social media, where millions scroll endlessly in search of beauty, escape, and fantasy, certain names rise above the noise. One of those names was Janae Gagnier. To her followers, she was better known as Miss Mercedes Moore, a stunning, vibrant young woman whose presence commanded attention every time she appeared on screen. She was born on November 26, 1987, in Houston, Texas. From her earliest years, those close to her described Janae as a girl who carried herself with grace and a magnetic charm that seemed to pull people in without effort. She wasn't just beautiful, she was radiant. Her smile lit up rooms, and her energy was both contagious and comforting. But Janae was not just another pretty face. She had ambition. In a city brimming with talent and competition, she carved a place for herself in the digital space. When Instagram began to explode as a platform for influencers, Janae recognized the potential it held. Slowly, carefully, she built her brand. Under the name Miss Mercedes Moore, she began sharing glamorous photos, confident looks, and bold expressions of style that set her apart. Her follower count grew into the hundreds of thousands, eventually surpassing 2.6 million people worldwide. To the outside world, she had it all: money, fame, beauty, and influence. People envied her lifestyle, the lavish images, the designer clothes, the luxury cars. For many, she was living proof of what success on social media could look like. But behind the filters and the staged perfection, Janae remained grounded. Friends and family often described her as humble, funny, and surprisingly private for someone whose life was so public. She was deeply close to her parents and her sister, and despite the glamorous lifestyle, she never lost her connection to them. Still, the influencer world comes with shadows. With millions of eyes on her came millions of opinions. Adoration, obsession, and sometimes dangerous levels of fixation. Janae had fans, yes, but she also had stalkers. She had admirers who crossed the line between appreciation and obsession. And though she rarely spoke about it publicly, those close to her knew she sometimes felt the weight of being so visible, so exposed, in a digital world where anyone could reach you with a click. To her fans, she was Miss Mercedes Moore, untouchable and larger than life. But to her family, she was simply Janae, the daughter who loved deeply, the sister who laughed the loudest, and the young woman who still had so much life ahead of her. It was this duality, public goddess, private soul, that made her story so captivating and so tragic. Because while Janae's star was still rising, a shadow had already begun to creep into her orbit. A shadow in the form of a man she barely knew, but one who knew far too much about her. And soon, that shadow would consume everything. As Janae's star shone brighter, an unseen shadow was quietly moving closer to her world. On the surface, she had everything: followers, brand deals, wealth, and the admiration of thousands who saw her as untouchable. But behind the glossy posts and the smiles that lit up her social media feeds, there were cracks that only those closest to her could see. Fame, especially the kind that blossoms quickly online, often brings not just fans, but people whose admiration grows into something far more dangerous. Among the millions who scrolled through her pictures, laughed at her videos, or envied her lifestyle, one man stood out: Kevin Alexander Accordo. To the world, Kevin was a nobody, a man with no glamorous following, no red carpets, no flashing lights. But in his own mind, he had found his obsession, and her name was Janae. Kevin was 34 years old, living in Florida, far removed from Janae's glittering Texas world. By all accounts, he had never been part of her inner circle, never appeared in her pictures, and never had any meaningful connection to her life. And yet, he was convinced he did. His obsession was not the kind that burned quietly in the background. It was intense, consuming, and ultimately destructive. Friends later recalled seeing signs of Kevin's instability. He spoke of grand conspiracies, of feeling watched, of believing in twisted fantasies that blurred reality. His mental state was fragile, unraveling day by day. And in that unraveling, Janae became a target of fixation. For Kevin, she wasn't just a woman on Instagram. She became something else, a figure he needed to reach, to possess, to silence. The frightening truth about the internet age is that fame often erases boundaries. To Janae, her posts were a way to engage her audience and build her brand. To Kevin, those posts were invitations. Every smile, every caption, every story. He took them personally, interpreting them as signals meant just for him. He studied her life from a distance, feeding the delusion that he was part of her world. Slowly, His obsession turned into action. He began leaving trails of his mental collapse online, scribbled messages, fragmented thoughts, and paranoid rants. His words hinted at torment, at feeling trapped, at fighting unseen forces. Some of these writings would only make sense in hindsight, once it was too late. As the summer of 2021 wore on, Kevin made a decision that would alter both their lives forever. He left Florida, embarking on a journey that spanned over 1,000 miles, heading toward Houston, Texas. He wasn't coming for a casual encounter. He wasn't coming as a fan seeking a selfie or an autograph. He was coming with darkness on his mind and chaos in his heart. For Janae, life went on as usual. She shared moments online, posed for pictures, kept up the image her followers adored. To her, Kevin was invisible. She didn't know his name, his face, or the storm he carried. She had no idea that the walls of her Richmond apartment, once a place of safety and solitude, would soon become the setting for her final moments. In the days leading up to the tragedy, Kevin's behavior grew increasingly erratic. His social media posts became more disturbing, his scribbled notes more chaotic. They spoke of betrayal, of unseen enemies, of violent conclusions. He was spiraling, and Janae, unknowingly, was at the center of that spiral. It is chilling to think that while she was preparing her next post, planning her next move, and living her life, Kevin was on the road, driving across state lines, bringing with him the obsession that would end it all. The shadow was no longer in the distance. It was coming closer, mile by mile, step by step, until the worlds of a young woman chasing her dreams and a man consumed by delusion would violently collide. August 29, 2021. A quiet Sunday in Richmond, Texas. The kind of day where the sun blazes against manicured lawns, children's laughter echoes faintly in the distance, and behind closed doors, most families retreat into the comfort of air conditioning to escape the Texas heat. For Janae Gagnier, though, the silence of that morning was something far more sinister. Her family hadn't heard from her in hours, which wasn't entirely unusual. Janae often stayed busy, between shooting new content, engaging with her fans, or simply recharging in solitude. But this time, something felt different. The stillness carried weight, an unspoken warning. When loved ones tried to reach her, the absence of her familiar voice or a casual text back was unsettling. Janae always found time to respond, even briefly, and yet now nothing. Concern grew into dread, until the decision was made. Someone had to go check on her. What they found when they entered her Richmond apartment would sear itself into memory forever. The living room bore a suffocating stillness. Everything seemed untouched, neat in its place. But there was something unnatural in the air, a heaviness, like the walls themselves were bracing for the truth about to unfold. And then, inside her bedroom, the horrific reality revealed itself. Janae's lifeless body lay there. The glow that had once captivated hundreds of thousands online was gone, replaced by the haunting stillness of death. She was only 33 years old, but she wasn't alone. Nearby, authorities discovered the body of a man. His name, Kevin Alexander Accordo. He wasn't someone Janae had ever introduced publicly, nor someone her family immediately recognized as a friend. Yet here he was, in her most intimate space, a man whose presence was as shocking as it was terrifying. Kevin was dead too, but not in the same way as Janae. Police quickly determined that Janae had been the victim of strangulation, a direct, violent act at the hands of another. Kevin, on the other hand, had died from multiple self-inflicted injuries. His death was ruled as suicide. The crime scene told a grim story. Kevin had broken into her home, confronted Janae, and in a fit of twisted obsession, took her life before turning on himself. What unsettled investigators even more were the messages Kevin had scrawled across the walls. Delusional, rambling writings revealed the disturbed state of his mind, disconnected, incoherent, and dripping with obsession. This was not a random crime. It was a fixation that had spiraled into violence. For Janae's family, the scene was unbearable. Their daughter, who had survived the trials of fame, the scrutiny of strangers, and the challenges of building her own life, was gone. Not because of illness, not because of accident, but because someone who barely knew her decided he had the right to end her story. The home that had once been her sanctuary was now a tomb of unanswered questions. How long had Kevin been watching her? How did he find his way into her private world? Was this something planned, or an impulse fueled by obsession? In that Richmond apartment, the curtain had fallen on Janae's life. But the horror was only beginning to spread. For her family, fans, and the online community that adored her, the discovery of her death was the beginning of a storm that would expose the darker side of fame, obsession, and the hidden dangers influencers face every day. The house on Sagebrush Drive was no longer just a home. It had become a silent stage of horror, its walls holding secrets that no one alive could ever retell. As the crime scene tape fluttered in the Texas heat, detectives moved carefully through the rooms, piecing together the puzzle of what had happened inside. Janae's body was found in a way that froze even the most seasoned officers. There were signs of strangulation, a brutal end to a life that had once been filled with beauty and light. Just a few feet away, Kevin Alexander Accordo lay lifeless. He hadn't been killed by anyone else. His wounds were self-inflicted, deep lacerations across his body, and nearby lay a knife smeared with blood. The coroner would later confirm what the officers already suspected. Kevin had ended his own life moments after taking Janae's. But what haunted investigators most was not just the crime itself, but the trail that led up to it. Kevin was from Florida, hundreds of miles away. He had no clear personal ties to Janae, no mutual friends, no evidence of any relationship between them. Yet, there he was, inside her home. Police began combing through his phone, his online searches, and his digital footprint. What they discovered painted a picture of obsession. Kevin had followed Janae's social media for months. On Instagram, she was Miss Mercedes Moore, an influencer with over 2 million followers, known for her striking beauty and glamorous lifestyle. But hidden behind the likes, comments, and reposts, Kevin's fixation had grown darker. He had left cryptic notes both on his body and inside the home, scribbled messages about soulmates and fate, words that revealed a disturbed mind slipping into delusion. The investigation also revealed that Janae had not invited him into her life. Friends and family confirmed she had no idea who he was. Her private life was guarded. Her home kept low profile, yet somehow Kevin had found her. Detectives speculated he may have stalked her online activity, tracked her movements, and eventually made his way to Richmond, Texas, with a deadly plan. Autopsy reports painted the final, tragic outline. Janae had been strangled to death, a slow, violent act requiring intent and time. Kevin's wounds showed hesitation marks, signs that he had struggled with himself before delivering the final blow. It wasn't just a murder-suicide. It was the chilling result of obsession crossing into reality, where fantasy collided with flesh and blood. For Janae's family, every revelation was a new wound. They were left with the unbearable knowledge that Janae's fame, the very thing that had elevated her into the spotlight, had also placed her in the crosshairs of a stranger's obsession. She hadn't just lost her life. Her privacy had been breached, her sanctuary invaded, and her safety stolen in her own home. And yet, even with all the evidence laid bare, the question remained: Why Janae? Why this young woman, out of millions of others online? Why did Kevin Accordo believe he was entitled to her attention, to her life? The answers were buried with him. But the echoes of his madness would never fade from that quiet Richmond neighborhood, nor from the hearts of those who loved Janae. For them, the nightmare was just beginning. News of Janae Gagnier's death spread like wildfire. At first, it was confined to Houston's modeling and influencer community, where people who had worked with her or followed her career were in shock. But soon, the tragedy began to ripple outward, pulling in people who had never even met her but felt a connection through her photos, her videos, her presence online. Tributes began pouring in. Friends and fans flooded her social media pages, leaving comments filled with disbelief, heartbreak, and anger. They posted old videos of her laughing, glowing in the sun, posing in outfits that captured her natural beauty. To many, it felt like the world had lost someone whose light had only just begun to shine at its brightest. Then came something that made the tragedy feel even bigger. Drake, one of the most recognizable artists in the world, took to Instagram and posted a photo of Janae. His caption was brief, but powerful, a recognition of her beauty, her spirit, and the tragedy of her loss. For many, it was shocking to see someone of his stature mourning her, but it also revealed something many didn't realize. Janae's influence stretched far beyond Houston. She wasn't just a rising local star, she was on the radar of people at the very top. The post instantly went viral, sparking thousands of shares, comments, and conversations. Suddenly, the entire internet knew her name, her face, and the cruel circumstances of her death. People who had never followed her before were now grieving her as if they had. For her fans, the recognition from someone like Drake was bittersweet. It validated just how special Janae was, but it also underscored the tragedy of a life taken far too soon. Her funeral became a sea of faces, friends, family, influencers, and strangers who simply felt the need to be there. The weight of her absence hung heavy in the air. Parents clutched their children tighter, friends leaned on each other for strength, and the city of Houston quietly mourned one of its own. Even now, years later, her death sparks conversation. Could it have been prevented? Did warning signs go unnoticed? Was there more behind this story than what the public was told? The unanswered questions keep her memory alive, and the pain of her loss continues to echo. Janae Gagnier was more than a model, more than a social media figure. She was a young woman with dreams, ambitions, and the rare ability to light up every room she walked into. And in the end, her story became bigger than anyone could have imagined. A tragic reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly it can be stolen away. But maybe the real question we should be asking is this: what truly happened behind closed doors that night? And how well do we ever really know the people around us? Welcome to Sinister Tales, where every whisper hides a secret and every story leaves a shadow. If you're drawn to the darkest corners of true crime and mystery, you're in the right place. Subscribe now, because some tales were never meant to be forgotten.